everybody, and welcome to the press. I'm Ryan Ballingy. It's great to have you here with us for our preview of this week's PGA Tour event. We've got a signature event for you in the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. We're looking forward to this week, the first signature event of the year in the mainland of the United States, second signature event of the year, third consecutive tournament in California. We've got a lot to get through today. We're going to go over tournament field. We're going to talk about the courses, the two host courses, the format, some information you need to know about those courses. A little bit's changed, especially on Spyglass for this year. And then we're going to talk about our model, betting odds. We're going to go through the full field here. So we're going to look at some players a little bit further down the board than maybe we have in the first couple of weeks of the year. We have been very fortunate that we have predominantly had winners that are shorter than 50 to 1. So we've been looking at players that more or less kind of expect. I mean, maybe Nick Taylor was a long shot at 110 to 1, but even then in that case, we liked him in the model. He was 12th in our model that week, so it wasn't that unexpected. So we're going to get right into things with tournament breakdown. We'll go over the model, horses for courses, and then we'll wrap it all up for you. So let's get into everything. Pebble Beach Pro-Am, AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. It's a great tournament. It's one of the better tournaments on the schedule. And I've always liked this tournament because it kind of vacillates year to year. You know, when Tiger used to play full-time on the tour, Torrey Pines felt like the first kickoff of the golf season because that was the event he played. He won a Torrey 8 times, 7 times in what's now the Farmers Insurance Open, 1 time at the U.S. Open there in 2008. So, Torrey was Tiger's place, Tiger Alley, if you want to call it that. So you knew the beginning of the year really came there. Maybe that feels like it's shifted a little bit for a couple of different reasons. Now that Farmers ends on a Saturday and feels like it kind of capitulates to the NFL's conference championship games. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but they do that. And now you've got Pebble, which has long kind of been this slow, drawn-out event, 156 players, 3 courses, 4 days of Pro-Am, really three for everybody. Coverage was not good because you're going between courses. It just was a really difficult tournament to follow. Now it's a different tournament. Now it's a 2-course tournament. It's a signature event. You've got basically 45 of the world top 50 competing in an 80-player field this week. And the remaining members of the top 50 in the world are either playing in the live event or not playing at all. And the live event is the international series in India. But I call it a live event. It's an Asian event. But it's an event inspired by Anirban Lahiri, who was on live. And we'll get to that in our second show of the week. But today we focus on the PGA Tour. So you've got an 80-player field here this week. This is the only signature event that has a requisite cap. You have to have a 72-player minimum this year, starting with the signature events outside of the Century. This is an 80-player cap. So you've got the top 50 from the FedEx Cup last year in the field. You've got the Aon Swing 5. You've got the next 10 from the fall, from the FedEx Cup fall, so they get in the first 2 signature events that aren't the Century. So this one and what would normally be Riviera, but it'll be Torrey again for the Genesis. So then you add in players who are in top 30 in the world, players who won this year already, and a couple of exemptions. And all of that comes together, get your 80-player field rounded out. We've got a 2-course rotation now for the second year of this tournament being a signature event. So you've got Pebble Beach Golf Links, that is the host course that's going to have players on it every single round of the tournament, right? It is the shortest, if not one of the shortest golf courses on the PGA Tour. I think you could probably fight with it over a couple of courses in the Amex rotation. You could go fight with TPC River Highlands in Connecticut in terms of what plays the shortest, but this is one of the shortest courses on the PGA Tour. Plays the par 72 despite being under 7,000 yards, 69.72. Is the official yardage. And for those of you who keep track of scorecards from year to year, neither have changed. Neither Pebble Beach nor Spyglass Hill, which we'll get to shortly. Is the Jack Neville, Douglas Grant original design from 1919. However, this has been modernized, updated, changed so many different times. It kind of just stands on its own at this point. I mean, a lot of the things are the same, but the USGA was sharing 1929 photos, for example, of Pebble Beach from the overhead, and so many things look different. So many things look the same, but so many things look different. It's just a place that has kind of changed. And it's probably due for restoration at some point, and I hope it's coming because that place could look so much more incredible than it already does. But this is a resort course. Technically speaking, the public can play it. It's going to cost you a lot of money, but this is a publicly accessible course. The greens are small here. The greens are also POA, which is something we haven't really talked about a whole lot about grass so far this season on the show. We don't typically talk about grass too often until you get to the Bermuda portion of the schedule, particularly in Florida where green becomes a bigger deal. But this is where POA starts to mean something. If we were going to talk about Riviera, we'd talk about it there as well, along with the Kikuyu. But at least on the putting surfaces, we've got POA this week. And as Jordan Spieth has said about this tournament, this is a dart throwing contest that leads to a putting contest, right? You got to be a ball striker to do well here. These are small putting surfaces, small targets. You've got to be able to hit them. And then you need to be able to kind of get a little bit lucky, because strokes gained putting is not going to look great here this week unless you just kind of luck into perfect lies or get around at the right times. POA gets bumpier throughout the course of the day, so it can be very difficult to manage as soon as you get in the later afternoons. More traffic means more bumps, and it can mess with speed, can mess with line. A lot of things can get knocked offline. So this is truly a kind of hit and hope putting contest to a regard. But obviously, the closer you get to the hole, the better chance you have of making it, even with bumpy greens. So that's the big takeaway about the Pebble Beach golf links, right? Just side note, we have $20 million purse this week for a signature event, $3.6 million to the winner, 700 FedEx Cup points to your champion. Now, we talked about Pebble Beach golf links. Let's talk about the other course this week, which is Spyglass Hill. So Spyglass Hill Golf Course is also owned by the Pebble Beach Resort, Pebble Beach Company, and this is a different era of golf course. This is a golf course that was built basically 50 years after Pebble Beach Golf Links opened. Robert Trent Jones Sr. was the famed architect of the time. He was Johnny Golfseed, planting championship golf. He came up with the idea of championship golf courses. And what he meant by that was hard golf courses all over the place. Spyglass Hill was one of those. This is still a short course, certainly by modern standards. At the time, a little bit longer, but even then still fairly short. 7,041 yards. Again, scorecard has not changed from one year to the next. And this is also a par 72 golf course. So the way this tournament works now that it's a signature event, back in the day, you used to have 3 rounds, right? You used to have one at Pebble, one at Spyglass, and then the third course for the better part of, 20 years was Monterey Peninsula's shore course. Well, Monterey Peninsula Shore got kicked to the curb because Pebble Beach only needed to host these 80 players. They didn't need to spread it out over 156. So they reduced it and kept it all within the Pebble Beach Resort. This golf course is also challenging. Greens are a little bit bigger, so you've got a little bit more room to miss there. It's more inland, so it's less likely to get super windy when the wind kicks up. There's a lot more tree-lined nature to the course, so you're going to get wind tunneling potentially in the case of windy days, but those trees are particularly tall, so it can be tricky to manage wind measurement around that part of the property of Pebble Beach's property, right? But it's a pretty scoreable golf course. Kind of feels in a way like the stadium course at PGA West, where when it was built, the PGA West stadium course, that die course, extremely difficult, really challenging. With modern equipment, not nearly so. But the rough is the challenge on both of these golf courses, relatively narrow landing areas in a lot of places. I would say Spyglass is obviously narrower. You've got narrow landing areas, particularly early on and later in the round at Pebble Beach, and then it kind of opens up in certain spots. Number 6 comes to mind. Maybe to a degree, 14 comes to mind, but even that's kind of tight. So the rough's going to be the limiting factor here for the players. Can they control the spin out of the rough? Can they get to the fairway accurately and then hit the green? So a lot of small targets this week. I think in terms of a number you want to think about, you probably want to think about 18, 19, 20 under par is probably a reasonable number to think about this week, unless weather gets in the way, right? These are very scoreable golf courses. 72 is not the realistic par here. I think 70.5 is probably more realistic. And the other thing you've got to keep in mind here, well, one thing I do want to add, Spyglass Hill for the first time this year will offer shot link data, which is fantastic. That's awesome. We've never had that in the history of this tournament. And shot link goes back 22 years. They've never offered secondary course shot link data at this tournament, or really any tournament for that matter that has a secondary course. I'm hoping that this is something that will start to carry through into other tournaments. We would love to have seen it last week at Torrey. We will love to have seen it at the American Express. We will hopefully see it at the RSM Classic in the fall, because we don't really get many of these multi-course tournaments. You get them early in the year, and then that's pretty much it till the fall. So we'll get that data for the first time. But thinking about modeling for this tournament, and we'll get to this model in a little while, but thinking about the modeling for this tournament is difficult, and it's a known limitation. I think it's a limitation if you've bet on golf before you would know about, because we've only had data historically about Pebble Beach golf links. So when you played this tournament in years past, before it became a signature event, you played no more than 2 rounds on Pebble Beach, right? You played one of those 3 rotating rounds in the Pro-Am portion at Pebble, and then if you got to the final round, you played one more round there. So you had 4 rounds. We had strokes gained data for 2 of them. Now that it's a signature event, you get 3 rounds on Pebble regardless. So you get 1 on Spyglass Hill in the first 2 rounds. For the Pro-Am component, which is now just 36 holes, Pro-Am goes away for the weekend, and the final 2 rounds are on Pebble. So you have 3 rounds on Pebble out of the 4, and you have data for that. Now we get to add in that Spyglass data. It's going to take a couple of years to figure it out, because 80 professional golf rounds on Spyglass Hill is not going to tell you a whole lot, especially spread across 2 days with 40 players each day. So we shall see about that. We did talk about the Pro-Am component a little bit, and it's not something I factor into my handicapping necessarily. You may, and I wouldn't say that's a bad thing to do it. But you got to remember, the format this week is a Pro-Am component to this for the first 2 rounds. So you've got 80 pros, 80 AMs, 2-person teams, net golf over those first 2 days for the Pro-Am teams. Depending on how involved the pro wants to get, there may be some component of that's worth monitoring. Maybe they've got a reason to play well on day 2 because they've got a chance to win with their partner and their handicap, even though they may not be playing well. So some things to keep in mind there. First round leader markets this week, we're not going to talk about on the show because it's a multi-course event, and I really don't like that idea of betting basically half the field in a round. But I could see why you would like it if you went after Pebble Beach, and we'll get back to that a little bit later, and we'll touch on that. Let's get to the betting odds. Let's get to the guys who are 55 and shorter, and then a little bit later we will get into the longer shots. We'll go through everybody in this 80-player field. But Scottie Scheffler's 5.5 to 1. He's 11 to 2 in his first event of the year, coming back off of hand surgery for some kind of Christmas Day ravioli incident that led to his hand getting punctured by glass, and to the point that they had to remove glass shards from his hand. So I think this is a horrible number. I think this is an unbettable number. I've seen it at other places even lower, 9 to 2, which is unbelievable to me, even for a guy that good. You got to assume some ring rust. You got to assume maybe some touch issues. I would lay off Scottie Scheffler at least for a couple of starts. I wouldn't even consider him for Torrey either, because if you're going to be hacking it out of the rough at Torrey, which I'm not saying he is or isn't, but if you're going to be hacking it out of Torrey, where it's really difficult to get to greens if you miss fairways, then that might mess with your touch even more, might be more painful. So I want to stay away from Scheffler for a little while. I don't really care even how well he does this week. Rory McIlroy's 12 to 1, T4 in that opening event of the year at the Dubai Desert Classic, going for that 5th win. Good week, Sunday 66 to close, so it made it look a little bit better than it was. Decent first day, middle 2 days not so great, last day great. So been playing well, obviously played well in Dubai. He has TGL tonight, though, as we're recording this on a Monday. So you may want to consider obviously he's going to take a private jet across the country. That's not in question. He's going to get there fairly quickly and on his own time. However, the preparation may be just a smidge off, something to think about. Colin Morikawa, 15 to 1, pulled out of Torrey Pines because he knew he'd just be back there again to play Riviera. I understand that. The last time we've seen him, and the only time we've seen him this year, is a second-place finish at the Century. He has an okay history here, albeit a limited one. I'm not willing to put it on 15 to 1. And I like Justin Thomas this week right after him at 16 to 1. That's going to be a struggle for me to bet on because of the number. I like the player. Played very well at the American Express, got himself into contention, gave himself a chance to win, even though Sepp Straka never backed down. I like him later on in the year. I would put him in the company of someone I would bet 25-1 right now to win a PGA championship. Again, Quail Hollow is the host. He's done it there. He likes Quail Hollow, kind of building up to that for a third PGA championship. I wouldn't be surprised if JT hasn't won a maker in a few months' time. Ludwig, 16-1, also feels kind of unbettable because we don't know where he is with his illness. Great first round to open at Torrey. Things got wacky. He got sick. Didn't look so good after that. I'm going to stay away from that number. Patrick Cantlay, 20-1. He is your horse for course play this week, as we will talk about in a little while. He has played this course better than practically everybody in this tournament, other than maybe Jason Day. Maybe that's it. Jason Day, Nick Taylor's one here, Tom Hoagie's one here. They're in the field. And those things are all fine. But consistency-wise, he has played this year in, year out, and done well. Done everything but win here. And I feel like he's kind of turned it around a little bit. This, I think, is the proof point. I would love this closer to 25 and be all over it. 20, I think I'll just touch a little bit. Decky, 25-1, I think is a playable number. Sanjay, 28-1. We were just a week off on him playing well. Picked him for one and done in the Amex. Of course, he misses the cut. Plays well the very next week. That is just how betting on golf works, isn't it? Tommy Fleetwood is 33-1. I don't really love him here. I think he could play well, but I don't love him here. Jason Day, 35-1. I love that number, and I love that guy. Plays this place very well. Played well 2 times ago at the American Express. Played well enough, I would say, at Farmers Insurance Open. Bad final round, 76. That was going to happen. It's going to be a tough week, given the weather conditions and the course conditions. So I'm willing to forgive that one bad round. 35-1 is a pretty good number. Sam Burns is going to be a pass for me at 35. Vic Hovland at 50-1. Wyndham Clark is your defending champion here. Touch on the past champions in a bit. 50-1 as a defending champion. I think he was 80-1 last year when he got in here as the U.S. Open champion. The whole event was shortened to 54 holes last year. And for some of you who were, the scant few of you who were geniuses who had a feeling this was going to happen, you did like a top 20 parlay before the round closed on everyone who's in the top 20 because you knew that they weren't going to finish the tournament. They weren't going to have another 18 holes. So that was going to be the locked-in leaderboard. To those of you who were geniuses last year, God bless you. If you get in that situation again this year, and I don't think it's going to happen, make sure you think about that before it's too late because a lot of books null and voided wagers that were made after the third round play was completed because they considered the tournament complete at that point retroactively. Matt McNeely, 55-1, I think is a very bettable number here. Plays here consistently, treats it like a home game, has played well, has elevated his game, is now a winner. I think he thinks of himself a little bit differently. I like that number. Max Grazerman, Tony Finau, Will Zalatoris, Taylor Pendrith, all also 55-1. I was a week off on Tony Finau, probably. I'm sure that's probably going to happen here. Will Zalatoris, I still think is a horrendous putter. I do think POA helps him here, though. Horrendous putters do better on POA because everyone stinks on POA. Could help him here this week. Pendrith's playing great. I just don't like him in this setting, a tighter golf course, even though his length is still tremendous. Grazerman's an interesting player. I don't think he's in that company. Let's go ahead and move to our horses for courses. We've talked about a couple of them already. Patrick Cantlay's done everything here but win. Jason Day has been fabulous here. Even in the last few years when he wasn't quite the same guy earlier in his career, still playing well here in the last 5 years. Eric Cole's playing well. Denny McCarthy's played here pretty well, although he hasn't been here as often, but he's played well here. Tom Hoagie is a winner here, has played well here historically. Matt McNeely, we just mentioned, and Nick Taylor, I want to throw out there. He won here in 2020. It's kind of a win out of nowhere, and that was his second PGA Tour win following from that Viking Classic win out of nowhere, which used to be Sanderson Farms. And I think that was a shock win. So was Hoagie's win, by the way. It was his first PGA Tour win. So that can happen at this tournament. You can get a longer shot. Nick Taylor's sitting in like the 90-1 range. He's already won this year. He gets no respect when he wins because he goes through these periods, especially last year, where he goes and wins in Phoenix, and then it's just terrible for the rest of the year. And I think that is factored into his pricing. But he comes right back to a place he really likes. I think that is worth noting. Past champions here last 5 years. Wyndham Clark was your winner last year. Again, remember, shortened to 54 holes. First time was played as a signature event. The other 4 champions of recent memory played this as a 3-course rotation with a final day sprint with the Pro-Am component to it for all 4 rounds of the tournament, depending on where you were in the Pro-Am. Justin Rose here won on a Monday in 2023. That was a surprise win. Then Tom Hoge won in a shock win in 2022. Daniel Berger won here in 2021. And then Nick Taylor won in 2020. We will go over Pro-Am winners. We don't have time for all of that. I don't care about that whatsoever. If you can find a betting market for such things, once they kind of release the teams, have at it. But that is going to be somewhere I stay far, far, far away from. Let's look at the model for this week. We run a model at golfnewsnet.com. Been doing it for 5 years now. You can subscribe. This is the last week to be able to subscribe for our fall special. We carried it through January, did very well. $40 for 1 year typically. Then we're doing $60 for 2 years and $80 for 3 years. You can tack that on if you are a GNN subscriber already or a new subscriber. However, after this week, we'll go back to more traditional pricing model. We're still going to have the 1, 2, and 3 year plan. It's just going to look a little bit different and be a little bit more expensive. So I would highly suggest you get in on that. Also, one thing to point out, and we'll touch about this in our other show this week because we've got to talk about the DP World Tour, the LPGA Tour, maybe a couple minutes on the Asian Tour playing in India. But we will start having LPGA modeling this week. We've got data for strokes gained, for finishes, putting all that together. We'll hopefully release that tonight after we record this, and you'll be able to see an LPGA model every week. So that is a tremendous value market. It is a market that is ripe for the taking, and I want to help you make money in that market because I've been making money on it. I would love to see you do the same as well. So I took the initiative, made the database, so that'll be out there just available for members as well. But we're talking PGA Tour here, so let's look at that model top 10. Again, we look at 1 and 2 year windows. We look at against all competition and weighted against the quality of your competition based on the official World Golf Ranking, waiting for the event. We look at history in this event for the last 3 years. We look at the last 10 PGA Tour events played to see how you perform in those. Again, mentioning limitations of the model this week, multi-course tournament with no data for the other course. That's one big limitation. Also, the prior versions of this event, you played no more than 2 rounds on the host course. Now it's 3 guaranteed. So we have limited data about Pebble Beach to that end. And then we still have somewhat of a limiting factor, but that's starting to go away, of still having 5-ish fall events covered in the past 10 events. So we really only have good data about players who played in the fall and have played so far this year. If you're a Corn Ferry Tour grad, and that really doesn't apply here, but if you're a Corn Ferry Tour grad, we don't have a whole ton of data about you if you weren't on the PGA Tour previously. So that there's still a little hangover on that, but not for much longer. We have a lot of data on people that are in this field, right? If you qualified through the next 10, we've got plenty of data on you. If you qualified via the top 50, we've obviously got plenty of data on you. So that kind of there's not as much limitation as it might sound like, because the vast majority of the weighting comes from those 1 and 2 year windows. Scotty Scheffler's number 1 far and away. I mean, I have a point system, an average point system. He's at 2.5. Hideki Matsuyama is like 1.5. So he is way ahead of everybody else. Hideki Matsuyama is number 2. That might surprise you a little bit. You might figure Rory McIlroy would be second in this field, but he is not, as you can see on the graphic. Patrick Cantlay's 3rd. He gets a lot of weighting here from his rounds at Pebble and good finishes, but also just generally a consistent, solid PGA Tour player who beats the field a lot. So he does very well. I still think he's about to come out of something. This could be a good year for him, but he's number 3. Wyndham Clark, your defending champion, is 4th. Again, lots of up and down, but you get a lot of benefit from winning here last year. Again, multiple wins with strokes gained in a limited fashion because we do averages, right? So you only had a couple of rounds here, 2 last year in this 54-hole event. Gained a ton of strokes, you get a bump. Colin Morikawa is 5th. Sungjae 6th. Again, I don't think any of these guys are surprises. McIlroy being 7th did surprise me when it kind of spit out all the numbers, because he did have a down year for him last year. And also, if you look at his performance in the better fields over the last year or two, not quite as good as it's historically been. So down a little bit. Bob McIntyre is 8th. And if you look at where his wins have come, they've come in solid enough fields, right? Scottish Open, Canadian Open. Get a little bump on both of those things being solid fields that probably fit this window of the ranking band that we use for the tournament this week. Because we're expecting like 65 points to the winner. So we're looking at tournaments that offer anywhere between 60 and 70 points to the winner as your comp tournaments. Ludwig Aubert is ninth. I don't know. Again, don't know where he is with his illness. Beware the sick golfer, they often say. Beware the tired golfer, they often say. I don't disagree with that sentiment, but I could love him because of his RSM history as well, but 16 is just too short. Justin Thomas is 10th in the model. Again, kind of surprising to me, but he has started to kind of make up for that horrible golf from 2 years ago relatively quickly. Had a decent year last year, playing okay right now. Then we'll look at the rest of the field and we'll wrap everything up on this episode. And we're just going to kind of pick and choose some guys here, but we're going to look through the rest of the 80-player field. Again, Zalatoris was 55-1. We mentioned him earlier. Keegan Bradley at 60-1, I find intriguing. Mentioned Bob McIntyre does well in the model. 60-1, I think, is worth a look. Sepp Straka just won at the American Express. A very different tournament. I think I would shy away from him here. Corey Connors, I think, is worth a look. I think there's 5 Canadians in this field, which to me is kind of interesting. 65-1, I think, is worth a look. Again, Russell Henley, great short game. Very good ball striker. Could be an intriguing play. Tom Hoagie, 65-1, past champion. Tom Kim playing TGL tonight. May want to consider backing off on that. Harris English coming off a win, 70-1. Jordan Spieth, we all know what we're getting with that guy coming off of wrist surgery, 70-1. I would stay far, far away from him until you kind of get a better flavor of what you're going to get here. I don't know if Spieth's washed. I don't know if he's playing great. I don't know where he is, or somewhere in between, which is kind of typically the case. Akshay Bhatia coming off of playing in the Dubai Desert Classic and a very nice cameo appearance in their video that they did with the folks, whoever from St. Andre that was part of it, which was very funny. I thought that was fantastic. Bo Hostler, 75-1. He is a potential horse for course play here. I didn't include him in the list. I probably should have, but he is an intriguing play at that number. I think Denny's an intriguing play at 75 as well. Holmes being 75-1, practically out of the top 50 in the world, looked absolutely horrendous and lost before he WD'd at Farmers. There was a one point in time a couple of years ago, probably 3 years ago, where I vowed to bet Max Homa if he was ever 50-1 or greater. I will back off of that for a long time to come now until I see some turnaround. Rasmus Højgaard, JJ Spawn. Spawn almost won at YLA for the Sony Open. Somewhat of a comp course. I mean, not that different, not that dissimilar. So if you want to see some value there, but against way better competition this time, 80-1. Probably need to be in the hundreds to think about him. Nick Taylor, 80-1. I'm probably going to smash that. I'm going to get after it with Nick Taylor. I think he can win here. He's done it before. He could do it again. Harry Hall getting in here was justice. He was in, then out, then back in. Got on a sponsor exemption, 91, playing great golf. I don't like him as a closer. He kind of clams up a little bit when it's time to close. Maybe on a top 10 could be very interesting. Poston, 91. Si Woo, Tom Dietrich, 90-1. I find Aaron Rai and Eric Cole at 100-1 fascinating this week. Aaron Rai I would like a little bit deeper. Eric Cole I like quite a bit. Different reasons, but very much the same guy. Aaron Rai, I'm really curious, is he a one-year wonder? Was what happened in 2024 a guy who elevated himself and will be there for a long time to come, or a guy who had a career year and is going to come back to the mean this year? I don't know that yet. We need more data. Eric Cole I like quite a bit. Seeing Minwoo Lee at 100-1 is kind of crazy. Just 18 months ago, we figured he was the next big thing. Now he is not netted out to that. Keith Mitchell, 110-1, I think is going to get some attention. I'm not going to bet it, but it's going to get attention because he likes playing this tournament. He just likes this event. I think he can do pretty well. Nick Dunlap, 110-1, has not demonstrated the capacity to play very well against superior fields. Skip. Billy Horschel could be kind of interesting. Loves the tighter golf courses. Maybe. Steve Yeager, 125-1. I'm gonna skip on, even though I like him a lot. Andrew Novak, 135-1. Great run at Torrey. Almost got there. Same with Sam Stevens, who was just in the prior graphic. I'm going to back off both those because Torrey tends to produce kind of random leaderboards. Don't take that as an affirmation that that's going to continue, even though I like Andrew Novak's game. A lot of people are going to be on Gary Woodland this week at 135-1. I understand that. Completely understand that. Not me. Justin Rose, 150-1. He is very much near the bottom of my model this week. I don't even publish the whole thing here, and you can check it out at golfnewsnet.com, but just a tip. Nico Echeverria and Lee Hodges, I think, are very interesting longer shots here. Echeverria has been playing great the last, 5 months? think he's worth a look here. Disrespected price. He could beat a better field. He did the job at what is now the Bay Current Classic, the Zozo Championship, against the best field of the fall. I think he can do it again. Tight golf course there, rainy, nasty conditions there. You probably can get some similar things here. I like him. Lee Hodges playing the best golf of his career, and that includes when he won the 3M Open. 165-1, playing more consistent golf. I think that's interesting. And then you start to get your deep shots, right? Get your Lucas Glover, Seamus Power. Seamus Power actually has a decent record here. Worth maybe a top 20 bet. I wouldn't go for a top 10. Top 20 bet I can like. Justin Lauer is kind of interesting. Pat Rogers, a Stanford product, could be kind of interesting. Again, going to shy away from all those guys. Eric Van Rooyen is 325-1. I didn't include three guys in this graphic. Those three guys are 350-1 or greater. Matthew Pavon is 350-1. Jake Knapp is 400-1. And Brendan Todd is 450-1. Please don't touch any of them with a 10-foot pole. So we've got a good handle on this event, I think. I think you've got some long shots worth taking. I think you've got some guys in that 20 to 30 shot, 20 to 30 range worth looking at. You've got some guys solidly in that 80 to 120 range. I think they're worth looking at. You can make a good little card here based on that this week. So that's everything. That's all that we're looking at here. And I think we've got a good week ahead. Again, back to starting on Thursday. It's not a Wednesday to Saturday. We'll check the weather, of course. Weather can change quickly. That is one thing you got to think about this tournament. You may want to bet things live for that very reason, because things can change quickly, right? And that might give you an opportunity for some value, especially in rounds 1 or 2, where a player might be able to make a run or overperform against the course average because of weather that day, whatever. Take a look at that. Live options are pretty good in this event. Of course, the Pro-Am thing, difference between playing a Pro-Am and playing as a professional. Those are different things too. You may want to take a look at those too for live betting purposes as well. We got one more show for you this week. We're going to talk about the LPGA, which has their Hilton Grand Vacations Tournament of Champions down at Lake Nona, a place I've played multiple times. It's a 32-player field. Worth throwing some darts on, even if you don't bet LPGA. Then we've got the Bapco Energy's Bahrain Championship on the DP World Tour. Two current live guys, one former live guy, top the table there. We'll talk about that as well. And just spent a couple seconds on the International Series in India for the Asian Tour. And then that's going to do it for maybe a couple seconds on the Panama Championship for the Korn Ferry Tour as well. That'll do it for us on our PGA Tour centered episode of The Press this week. Thanks so much for listening or watching. Not only can you catch us on streaming and on your favorite podcast platform, you can watch us on Golf News Net TV if you are doing so. Thanks for doing that. You can catch us on the Golf News Net app that's fresh out for Roku. Download it. You can watch all of our stuff on demand. And you can also watch us on Free Live Sports and Freecast. Back with another episode to round out the week. Thanks so much for watching. We will catch you next time on The Press.